What's up, gangsters? It's that time of the year again, where I take a look back at some of the best movies that I've watched in the previous year, 2022. And by best movies, I really just mean movies that I just want to talk to you guys about. And as always with these type of videos, the clips that I use for the movies, they're mostly taken from trailers that I found on YouTube. So the quality and the editing is a little different, like a little lower quality than my usual videos. And I did rehash some of the letterbox reviews that I, like for the movies that I actually wrote about over the past year. But all in all, I think this video came out pretty well. I think you guys enjoy it. So, without further ado, here's 25 movies from 12 different countries spanning 8 decades this year, I believe, and a wide variety of genres, so let's go.
And let's start with The Art of Return, El Arte de Volver. I love that title. About a young woman who returns to her hometown of Madrid, where we follow her interactions with family, old friends, and strangers over the course of her first 24 hours back home. And it really is just that. Some 6 more or less standalone scenes of Noemi interacting with people, making it very episodic, but it totally works in this case. They all deal with themes of the passage of time, growing older, moving on, all linked to our main character, who's obviously a flawed character, but that's what makes her interesting, like real and relatable. Pretty mesmerizing performance by Macarena Garcia. I thought she was great. In general, some great performances and believable chemistry between characters. It all felt pretty real, pretty humane, and that's why I kinda love this one. Next, a Czechoslovak adaptation of Beauty and the Beast from filmmaker Juraj Herz, best known for the Czechoslovak new wave classic The Cremator. Cremator? So, you know the story. What I loved most about this adaptation is its actual fairy tale-like feel to it, in combination with this very textured, somewhat gothic production design. Really, the movie, especially in HD, it looks absolutely gorgeous, something these clips from YouTube unfortunately don't really do any justice. It drags a little bit here and there, but the aesthetic-y set pieces pretty much make up for that, in my experience. The design of the beast took me a little while to get used to, but now I actually find it quite memorable and rather creative, like pretty unique look. Not sure what else to really add to this, but overall it's pretty great if this looks like something you'd be into. Give it a try. Ah, yes, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. I fucking loved this. Often compared to One Cut of the Dead, which makes sense, as they're both no-budget, high-concept Japanese comedies relying on long, singular takes. This one takes the sci-fi time travel angle, where this cafe owner finds out that the monitor in his cafe is connected to the monitor in his apartment above the cafe, but with a 2-minute delay. So the movie starts with the guy in his apartment getting a message from himself down in the cafe 2 minutes in the future. And then exactly 2 minutes later, he's down there giving that exact message to his past self up in the apartment. And from there on, the movie goes and he and some other people get into a bunch of hijinks. Might sound gimmicky, but trust me, it just works and it's so good. It's quick, perfectly short running time, it's funny, it's clever, it's quirky, it's wholesome. It doesn't take itself and the whole time travel aspect too seriously, but its execution is still done to a T. Really, the production is a technical marvel. All in all, I just really had a fun time with this one. First horror movie from Ireland, the Shudder original Caveat. And I was mostly just really quite pleasantly surprised by this one. It's about this guy who, for some reason, takes on this job looking after a mentally disturbed young lady for a couple of days in a remote, isolated, creepy house on an island, while having to wear a chained up harness that prevents him from entering certain rooms. Because why wouldn't you? It's quite rough around the edges, a little messy, like unfocused here and there, and in the end not everything seems to be making a whole lot of sense, and the amount of overused horror tropes is crazy, but it worked. Yeah, I thought it was sincerely creepy. I was engaged throughout, the jump scares were justifiable. I just had a really good time with it. I mean, don't go in expecting some kind of masterpiece, but really, for a quick little scary time, yeah, I thought it was great. And now for something completely different, Dead Man's Ladders. A 1980s Soviet dystopian post-apocalyptic drama movie. Nice. And woo, this is not an easy one and definitely not for everyone. But ultimately, I found it quite effective and rewarding. It's just, again, not an easy one to sit through. It's slow, often quite monologue or dialogue heavy, but it's the visual presentation and world building that made it all worthwhile for me. Shot in sepia tones, this movie is filled with some truly haunting imagery of just an absolutely bleak world with zero hope. Quite memorable, quite impressive. I mean, I'm no expert on the subgenre, but really, it's some of the most effective post-apocalyptic visuals that I've ever seen in a movie. Most likely themed after the international tension due to the Cold War, but there seems to also be themes here focusing on mankind, hope, but given the movie's setting, it's a quite depressing watch. So again, definitely not for everyone. Proceed with caution. Dogface, a trap house horror. And that's not just like a subgenre that I just made up. It's the actual title of the movie, and I did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. Don't get me wrong, this is not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, at least not from a traditional technical filmmaking point of view. But boy, was it entertaining and funny, perhaps unintentionally so, but really I was intrigued and engaged from beginning to end. Story-wise, it's a totally nonsensical mess, journeying through several horror subgenres. It's all just so silly, but that only makes it all the more entertaining as you sincerely have no idea where things will go next. While definitely not as mind-bogglingly odd or idiosyncratic as some of the more well-known so bad it's good outsider art hits, it is still really fun in how, this seems to be played completely straight while still being ridiculously misguided. Even though the director himself, he commented on my Letterboxd review that was all intentional. Either way, fun stuff. Then, the influential Japanese pink film Flower and Snake. I rewatched this after getting it on Blu-ray, and I think this sincerely is just a pretty good movie. While played mostly completely straight, the story is kind of ridiculous and over the top. We follow this young man with mommy issues who's asked by his boss to kidnap and train his wife so that she'll become more submissive for him, like for the boss. And then the movie kinda goes from there. It's pretty out there for its time, with it being influential in the sense that this was the first S&M movie in Nikatsu's Roman porno series, and its success helped the studio through a relatively like a rough financial period. But like I said, I also feel like it's just sincerely a pretty good movie. As often with Nikatsu Roman porno movies, it's very well shot, it's entertaining, for a lack of better words, and it has a nice, quick, and short running time. Honestly, definitely not a bad introduction to the subgenre. From Russian filmmaker Mikhail Kalatozov, whose The Cranes Are Flying appeared in a previous Best Movies video, comes Soy Cuba, I Am Cuba. Technically socialist propaganda issued by the Soviet Union in collaboration with the now socialist state of Cuba shortly after the Fidel Castro-led revolution. But by giving Kalatozov almost full creative freedom, it became something completely unique and, honestly, pretty amazing. We get 4 separate stories set in Cuba during the revolution, following different characters that go through different aspects of the socio-political state of the country at the time. Kalatozov again teams up with cinematographer Sergei Urushevsky, is that right? To create some of the most technically impressive cinematography that I've seen, especially for its time. The use of wide lenses and impressively long, complex single takes alone already sets this movie apart, but there's just so much more going on here. On top of that, the almost universal themes of classism, fighting, like revolting against the oppressor and what have you, they're effective regardless of where you find yourself on the political spectrum. And it's actually a shame that I'm missing a lot of this socio-political context, as I bet I'd appreciate this movie even more if I was, more familiar with the whole backdrop. But regardless, highly impressive movie. Arguably the most highly acclaimed title on this list, and I still can't believe it took me this long to finally check it out, Wong Kar-wai's magnum opus, In the Mood for Love. And yes, I loved it. It's so beautiful. First off, aesthetically, easily one of the most gorgeous looking movies I've seen in a long while. The cinematography, the framing, the usage of warm tone colors of like green, yellow and red, it's an absolute feast to the eyes. Not to mention Maggie Cheung as Mrs. Chan, perhaps the most stunning looking character I've seen in any movie. And the soundtrack, beautiful. The story itself, which at its core is the simple tale of two married people bonding over the fact that they've discovered that their partners are having an affair, is so well done. It's extremely multi-layered, but at the same time subtle and nuanced throughout. That is, until you get further and further into the movie, eventually peaking at that emotionally devastating climax. It's heartbreakingly sad, but the way it's executed, it sort of like transcends the ending and, well, the overall movie into this place of poetic, melancholic beauty. Not trying to like get all pretentious, like trying to oversell this whole thing, like in case that you haven't seen it yet. But I personally believe that it is that good. From the golden age of Hollywood comes Billy Wilder's The Lost Weekend. I've been trying to get more into 1940s Hollywood, and this was great. For what I consider an old movie, I was just so pleasantly surprised by how well this holds up. This was really good and so well paced. It didn't drag at any point and I got quite invested almost from the get-go. It's about this alcoholic who is supposed to go on a weekend away with his brother to continue his, 10 days of not drinking, but instead goes on the titular bender. The movie is pretty unapologetic in its portrayal of alcoholism, but still with a like a certain respect, if that makes sense. It's like our main character, he isn't necessarily a bad guy, he just has his own demons to fight with, the alcoholism. The resolution at the end is perhaps a little easy, but at the same time it didn't necessarily bother me. I mean, it's like the subject matter is a little too complex to nicely wrap up in 2 hours, so I feel like they did a great job by not letting the viewer leave the movie feeling completely miserable. Yeah, good stuff. Then, from former Yugoslavia, The Marathon Family. A black comedy from Serbian filmmaker Slobodan Cion, whose Strangler vs. Strangler appeared in a previous Best Movies video. Earlier this year I also watched his Who's Singing Over There, and I've been told that these three movies together, that they form the unofficial trilogy, if you will, of the Yugoslavian classic dark comedies. And I fucking love them. In The Marathon Family, we follow a family of 6 generations working as undertakers, but who run their business in a pretty sketchy manner by working with a group of local gangsters. And then, throughout the movie, they just keep getting themselves into all kinds of wacky situations. I just love all the characters and their constant bickering. The stuff that they get into, it's pretty absurd. The comedy gets pretty dark. I don't know, there's just something about these Balkan black comedies that just really works for me. And it's just frustrating that it's kind of hard for me to put the words why exactly that is. So if this looks like something you'd appreciate it, please check it out. Really, together with Who's Singing Over There and Strangler vs. Strangler, they do indeed make up for an amazing little trilogy, official or not. Okay, so I'm kind of cheating over here, as this isn't a movie, just a feature-length episode, the series finale of Nathan For You, Finding Francis. And while I'd like to think that this, let's call it like a documentary, that it works on its own, being familiar with the series probably definitely helps. So really quick if you're not, it's a reality comedy show created by Nathan Fielder, where he attempts to help independent businesses with the most ill-advised, convoluted ideas, with only Fielder and the crew being in on the joke. In Finding Frances, Fielder attempts to help an older man find his long-lost love, a woman he hasn't spoken to in some 50 years, with having little to no information besides her first and maiden name. And then what we get is just an incredibly humane character study. Sometimes wholesome, sometimes not so much, but always real, while maintaining the ridiculousness of the show's premise and execution. Even Fielder's arc, if you will, it works surprisingly well, if not a little forced, but it definitely adds an extra layer to the whole movie and themes. It's an incredibly engaging documentary that'll definitely put a smile on your face, and perhaps even a tear in your eye. Some more horror for the people that follow my channel. For that stuff, Night Train to Terror. And oh my, what an absolute trash blast this was. It's a mangled anthology slapped together by cutting down 3 feature-length movies to 30-minute segments, with a surprisingly interesting wraparound story in which God and Satan fight for the souls of the segment's protagonists. All 3 are trashy horror stories filled with gore and nudity, only made better by the fact that they edited down the source material so carelessly, resulting in confusing stories that jump all over the place, with characters appearing without any introduction and baffling jumps in time. It's amazing. With, as a bonus, the seemingly completely unrelated opening sequence, which is basically just a bad 80s music video for an annoyingly catchy song, which for some reason is repeated each time, like after each segment. It makes absolutely no sense, but I love it. Dumb 80s trash at its finest. And if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you probably will. And while on the topic of dumb 80s trash, Ninja 3: The Domination. Although in all honesty, this was surprisingly really not all that bad and actually just pretty good. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's more than a few questionable writing, editing, and directing decisions here, but it's all just so deliciously ridiculous. I mean, it's a supernatural ninja revenge movie. What's not to love? It's so fucking 80s. It's almost as if they went out of their way to make a contemporary parody on 80s movies. But I guess this is just how the 80s were. Without going in specifics, the story is just so wild, and so many scenes and interactions and dialogue, they make no sense in a realistic, this is how the world actually works kind of way. And it's hilarious. The pacing is great, there's constantly something happening. It really is entertaining throughout. So yeah, honestly not sure what to add to that. It's just something you have to check out. So yeah, grab yourself some homies and drinks and snacks, pop in Ninja 3 and just have an absolute blast. You won't be disappointed. Another 1940s Hollywood classic, The Philadelphia Story. A romantic comedy in which a rich socialite is getting married, only to have her wedding become a little complicated when a couple of days before, her ex-husband and a reporter and photographer for a magazine suddenly show up. So, when it comes to comedies, I'm really mostly just familiar with the movies of the 90s and 2000s, and I'm not at all used to the style of comedy from 1940s Hollywood, but I kinda love this. The rapid-fire, back-and-forth, snappy dialogue, it's great, especially when delivered by these like almost larger-than-life Hollywood icons. And gotta love these soft-focus, glossy close-ups. There's just something so classy about it, and that experience, it might just be a perhaps artificial byproduct of a bygone era, but regardless, it works and I kinda love it. The movie wraps up a little too conveniently for my liking, but from what I understand, that was often the case with these type of movies from this era, so I can't really complain there. I mean, like, yeah, I still very much enjoyed this one. Gotta have a good old edgy coming-of-age movie in these videos. And this year, it's Puppylove. Directed by Swiss-born, Belgium-based filmmaker Delphine Leherese? This movie isn't necessarily doing anything new. It's actually pretty typical, like almost like a blueprint coming-of-age movie checking all the boxes. Angsty teenage girl who lives with her divorced dad befriends the sexually promiscuous girl that moves in next door, and together they get into a bunch of hijinks until it takes a bit of a dark turn towards the end. So, even though this might feel like you've already seen all of this in other titles, I still quite enjoyed this. Mostly because it all just felt sincere and honest to me. It's pretty realistic, with a bit of stylization for the sake of it being a movie that aims to entertain and, well, perhaps shock. Solène Rigaud, as the protagonist, she gives quite a fascinating performance. Very natural, which made the awkward and cringy scenes just like so much better. She's rebellious, annoying, confused, curious, growing up while still being a kid, and she does it all in a rather believable and endearing manner. So yeah, sure, it's your typical angsty teenage fanfare, but I never experienced it as cliche or predictable or boring. So if you like that stuff, this will probably deliver the goods for you. Then we have Red Spirit Lake, a surprisingly pretty good shot-on-video horror movie that walks a fine line between, like shot-on-video trash and something with actual artistic merit. It felt pretty transgressive. The movie occasionally taps into this realm of dreamcore-like aesthetics and vibes that came out looking surprisingly well on video. It did take me a little while to get into all of this, though, with a story concerning some sketchy real estate agents trying to gain control over the titular piece of land, which for generations has belonged to a group of witches. And then a bunch of stuff happens. So, besides the aforementioned occasional dreamlike vibe, it does also deliver on just a bunch of gnarly horror like exploitation scenes. It just doesn't rely on just that. Really, at the end of the day, I'd say it's this sincere artistic attempt that sets this movie apart. So I'm throwing this one in also as sort of a reminder to myself to revisit it someday, soon hopefully, as I was already too far into this movie before I actually started to appreciate it for what it was, like seeing that, oh, this is actually pretty good. Yeah, so any fans out here? From Hideaki Anno, creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion, comes Ritual, his second live-action feature, and this was pretty great. About a somewhat aimless filmmaker who meets this, I'd almost call her a manic pixie dream girl if it wasn't for the layers of emotional and mental baggage. And then together they try to, I guess, mostly just make themselves feel better, or at least feel something, or maybe just to escape life. The movie deals with a lot of themes, specifically loneliness, I feel, and mental illness, trauma. The filmmaker character throughout, like, he says a lot of interesting things about life in voice-over form, and so I hate that I'm always so bad at reviewing art house movies with depth, if you will, like this one, because honestly, like, this one has so much going on. And I just often struggle with like saying something that does this kind of work and like true justice. But I try. It is quite slow. It has this sort of meditative pace, which I honestly didn't mind at all. If anything, it fits the overall poetic vibe and tone of the movie. Plus, the visuals are absolutely stunning and kept me intrigued throughout. So many shots that I, like wanted to screenshot. They were just like so gorgeous to look at. Like, it's such a beautiful movie. The piano soundtrack was very pleasant as well. So, yeah, I'm sorry guys. Like, I try. It's sincere. Like overall, it's a great movie. The other Japanese pink film on today's list, again from Nikatsu, or is it Nikatsu? Sex Hunter. And, well, doesn't that just sound promising? Often compared to Suspiria, here we follow a young ballet dancer who's accepted into this prestigious dance academy where not all is what it seems and but that's kind of where the similarities stop. I feel like this comparison is somewhat exaggerated, as this is mostly just a really perverted Japanese pink film. And it might say a lot more about me than the actual movie, but I quite enjoyed this. Tight running time at a little over an hour and just jam-packed with debauchery. And all of this pretty well photographed. Really, like, it just keeps surprising me how well some of these Nikatsu Roman porno movies are shot. Pretty taboo breaking and perverted and messed up, and I'm not really sure what else I can add to this. So if this sounds like something you'd enjoy, I always find it like kind of like hard and awkward to recommend these type of movies, but yeah, check it out. It's Shiva Baby. This movie, I think I kept seeing it like popping up on Letterboxd, so eventually I just decided to check it out, and oh man, I kinda loved it. It's a low-budget comedy about an aimless young woman who attends a Shiva, it's a Jewish mourning ritual, only to have the most awkward and uncomfortable day imaginable due to all kinds of interactions with different people at the Shiva. And that's it. Really, the whole movie plays out over just the course of like one afternoon, and it's oh man, it does a fantastic job at putting you in the shoes of our protagonist. Really, it had been a while since a movie made me feel so like uncomfortably stressed, like awkward, but really to an anxiety-inducing degree. But exactly therein lies this movie's power. Yes, it's a comedy, but at times it's harder to watch than your average mainstream horror flick. The music added a lot to this as well. It's a score that could have been used just as well for an actual horror movie. So yeah, overall I thought it was pretty great. Would watch again. From Krzysztof Kieslowski, director of one of my favorite movies, 3 Colors Blue, comes a short film about killing, and damn, this hit pretty hard. We follow 3 characters, a young man, a lawyer, and a cab driver, and 2 of them get killed. One in a senseless act of violence, the other in a state-mandated execution. The movie says a lot about humanity, morality, and it might have even played a role in the abolishment of capital punishment in Poland in the late 80s. Contrary to his 3 Colors movies, this is such an intentionally quote-unquote ugly looking movie, as that's how Kieslowski saw the world at the time, which he managed to do by using several in-camera effects like filters and vignettes, resulting in this murky green-yellowish look and feel with heavily exaggerated shadows. It honestly took me a while to get into, but it definitely sets the overall tone for like this depiction of a bleak, depressing, communist-era Poland. Very technically impressive. Second half of the movie, it's pretty intense. Sure, it's the execution of a murderer, but the movie made sure to depict the much more complex reality behind this whole situation. It's really effective. Not an easy watch, but yeah, ultimately quite rewarding. I intended to cover this one during my The Horrors of 2022 series, but, well, that failed miserably. So, let's try again. Here, Speak No Evil. A Danish-Dutch co-production in which a Danish and Dutch family meet while on vacation, and then later, back home, the Dutch family invites the Danish family to come over for the weekend, which they do, and then a bunch of stuff happens. And I thought this was great. First of all, and this might be very subjective, but I love the Dutch couple and just like in general the Dutch aspect of it all. I don't watch a lot of Dutch cinema, as I often find it somewhat cringy, but I do love it when we're being represented, and they did such a great job in this movie. The whole Dutch aspect, it's very on point, to a certain degree of course, but yeah, I loved it. It's a slow burner for sure, but with a constantly rising level of tension and to a certain degree frustration as well. And that's where a lot of the negative reviews come in. People being overly frustrated with the actions of some of the main characters, being unable to suspend disbelief, which I get, but at the same time I feel like that's kind of the point here. Like they're kind of doing this to themselves. I don't want to give away too much. Really, like, I'll probably just leave it at this because it all just very much worked for me. So I just love to throw this one out as a recommendation. Sure to give it a chance. Wax, or The Discovery of Television Among the Bees. God, do I love that title. Easily the weirdest movie on today's list. I'm not even sure how to really describe this one. Basically some 90 minutes of the ramblings of a madman. It's all just narration. But really, the whole movie is a voiceover supported by visuals that usually in some way correspond with what's being said. With these visuals being kind of all over the place, including just like shot footage, but also stock footage, primitive early CGI, and a lot of like warped, distorted images, like effects over images. It starts out interestingly and comprehensibly enough, but little by little it descends more and more into madness, ultimately becoming this crazy whirlwind of befuddling gobbledygook, including Christian mythology, commentary on warfare like drone warfare, reincarnation, interplanetary travel, mind television, and a lot of Mesopotamian bees. It becomes completely indecipherable the further you get, although I wouldn't be surprised if it all means something. It's just, I don't know, maybe I prefer it to all just be a bunch of like frantic gibberish. I honestly can't tell. Like I don't know. The director could have just as easily made this whole thing as like an elaborate joke. I don't know. And I both love and hated this, and really, I mostly just wanted to throw this one in like to share with you guys. I mean, check it out, it's on YouTube. Good luck. One last stop in Japan for Woman in the Dunes. And man, this was really good. We follow an amateur bug collector who, after a long day of, well, collecting bugs in the sand dunes, misses the last bus, with then some local villagers offering him to stay at this woman's place at the bottom of a sandpit, only to find himself trapped the morning after, being forced to work with the woman for the villagers. And damn, what an uncomfortable, claustrophobic watch this is. You basically start feeling the heat and the sand sticking to their sweaty bodies as the man tries to think of different ways to escape throughout the movie. And as unpleasant as this movie makes you feel, the cinematography is absolutely beautiful. Really, it's a gorgeous looking movie. I was like, all the different ways the photograph sand, making it one of the main characters, like almost like an antagonist in what the score at times makes it feel like a horror movie. Besides the tensity of the story, it all feels very allegorical. You know, like a bug collector being trapped and observed. Get it? But I feel like it goes much, much further than that. There's probably, well, I know there's a lot that I didn't even catch. But besides that, even just at face value, it's an incredible piece of filmmaking. Definitely recommend it. And let's finish with one of, if not the most popular movie on today's list, but that didn't stop me from wanting to talk about it one more time, The Worst Person in the World. Generally described as a romantic comedy drama, which I guess it is, but I'd rather describe it as just a piece of slice of life cinema. A character study of Julie, a woman in her 20s to early 30s throughout the movie, living in Oslo, and what we get here is 12 chapters in her life. It deals with themes like career, romance, growing older. It's funny, it's sad, because that's how life is. And that's what I loved about this so much. It feels very real. It's genuine, it's humane. It's like, is Julie the titular worst person in the world because she's sometimes selfish and follows her own path? Because I don't think so. It's kind of hard for me to put the words why exactly this worked so well for me. I guess I just loved how this was just such an honest peek into the lives of some rather ordinary but still interesting people. When the movie is funny, it's pretty funny. When it's sad, I was basically tearing up. All the while, it all just felt so sincere. So yeah, pretty amazing movie.
And there you have it. 25 movies. I've said this before, but these really are some of my favorite types of videos to make. Because really, it just gives me the opportunity to just, like talk about some random movies that I want to talk about. But where I don't have to limit myself to a specific genre or theme. I can just talk about movies. How cool is that? So I sincerely hope that you guys enjoyed this video as well. Like maybe you came across some titles that you weren't familiar with. Maybe some stuff you want to check out, and well, if you do that, hopefully that you'll enjoy them. Feel free to let me know in the comments. And I've definitely said this before, but I am gonna try and be a little more active on YouTube again this year. Let's see how that goes. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. Besides here on YouTube, that's the only social media platform that I'm actually active on. It's just at horrible.reviews. Because over there, I at least try to sometimes give you guys like a little bit of an update as to what's going on. So yeah, you guys do that, okay? Okay. Thank you guys for watching. Seriously, like, thank you guys for watching. My channel's 15th anniversary is about to come up a little later this year. I should do something for that. But really, like, for all the people that are still around, or even for the new people that discovered this channel recently, and you guys still watching, that's awesome. Like, that's sincerely awesome. Thank you. Cheers. Have a nice day.